of working with animals, how to empower the lives of animals through working with them using positive reinforcement and applied behavior analysis. We do that through our live streaming services. Right, Coco? Yeah. We do that through our live streaming services, which you can find out more information on our website at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Good morning, everybody. Hello. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach me directly at my email that I check personally every day. Sometimes it takes me hours. Lara, Lara, at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Hello, Sam. So I took a chance and brought Coco on this episode with me. Coco is our 30-plus-year-old umbrella cockatoo. I don't know much about Coco's previous. Hi, Sam. I don't know much about his history, but I was told he's had several homes, and I found him. He's gonna be in this episode this morning in my presentation. I found Coco when I was working with a zoo, training for a zoo 3 years ago, I believe. Yeah, and he now resides with us because today we're going to talk about working with numerous different animals with abnormal repetitive behaviors. Hi, Sam. And usually I find the more manipulative the animal, they're always learning from their environment. The more manipulative the animal, the harder it is to keep. I find that with several different species of animals. Definitely the parrot, definitely the cockatoos. Good morning. Hello, Sean. Hey, Carrie. It's Coco with a K, Carrie. K-O-K-O. And you can hear Sam in the background. We're also joined today by Milo. This is why I said I was taking a chance bringing him out today. Let me get this off. Sorry about the noise. I knew this is what might happen. But the care of the animals we have here at the center is what's first and foremost, most important to me. I chose to bring Coco out because I've been gone a lot lately with Rocky's commercial. Hi, Sam. Rocky's commercial. The commercial that Rocky was in. And I'm getting ready to leave again Thursday. Hi, Sam. I'm getting ready to leave Thursday for a 2-day presentation I'm giving in Montreal. And it is on this specifically, working with abnormal repetitive behaviors with animals. My focus is on exotics. I have a lot. Yeah. I have a lot of friends that do fabulous work with domestic animals. So I choose to complement their work and the science behind the work they do through backing that up with working with exotics. We're currently in our level 2 membership starting to read a book on the evolution of domestication, genetics, the science, the research that goes along with that. It's a big eye-opener. So I'm going to be training Coco and working with behavior with him through this whole presentation. Hi, Sam. And if you want to find out more about the work we do and the services we offer, you can find it on our Animal Behavior Center website. Hi, Sam. Just an antecedent to a scream that's going to happen behind me. Anyway, we have our level 1 memberships for people working with companion animals. level 2, more for geared towards people focusing on using applied behavior analysis in the field of working with animals, professional trainers, but definitely not limited to, board certified behavior analysts. And then we also have the Parrot Project, where we do nothing but focus on behavior training and enrichment with ferrets. Right. So sorry, I've got to keep my eye focused on working with Sam, or what's his name, Coco, this morning. So don't necessarily pay attention to the animal I'm working with here. Pay attention to the behaviors, what I'm doing. So it may look like I'm just feeding Coco, but we've come a long way with Coco. Coco's been with us 2+ years now. Hello. This is an animal that when I first started working with him, 100% off contact, right? So watch how I'm feeding him. Coco is a resource guarder. I'm feeding him long things, okay, to protect my fingers. And what I'm looking for is the pace in which he grabs the food. Okay. You see that, how it's kind of snappy right there at the end? That was different than the first time I fed him. The first time it was very, I was looking for calm, smooth, not rapid movements. So the second time I fed him, he could have snapped at it because I sat here and talked to the camera with the snap pea in my hand. That's why I tell people, you're always training. The key question is, what are you training? Okay, I didn't get the snap, but I've got still the fast movement that I didn't get the first time I handed it to him. That's the turkey vulture. She's been here longer than. If you could see, if I turn the camera around, there's a turkey vulture on her station. That's her cue to us that she's ready for breakfast. And she's out there in the sunlight staring at us, and Coco sees her. So anyways, good morning, everybody. Hi, Sam. Okay, so a couple of things I want to talk about this morning. I'm going to show you parts of my presentation for next weekend. Hi, Rico. Parts of my presentation for next weekend, where I'm giving the 2-day seminar in Montreal to a group. I asked who's in the audience, and they said, primarily professional dog trainers and veterinarians. So the world of abnormal repetitive behaviors. Hi, Sam. Okay, abnormal repetitive behaviors. Coco has several. Rocky has several. Snow, our deaf and blind border collie, will have some. I did train that this week. Coco has several. When I first started working with Coco, I seriously considered doing coffee with the critters in the office this morning, because I knew if I did it out here, there'd be a lot of noise involved. But I have a very busy upcoming schedule. I want to be with my animals. Because you'll see in here my presentation I give this morning, where studies show that social complexity is one of the most complex forms of enrichment. And this is what I'm providing by being out here and arranging animal environments. You know, I could get into the more intelligent the animal, the harder it is to keep, but then you have to define intelligence. These guys are not easy to keep. Either are some of your breeds of dogs, your working dogs. Hi, Sam. Some of the animals that we work with in with education animals, zoo environments. I assume that if you guys know you're watching Coffee with the Critters, that you're going to have sound. I don't mind that. Hi, Sam. I have reinforced this throughout the week because I'll take this over the screaming. Okay, so a lot of my work, next weekend I'm going to be presenting for 16 hours in Montreal on abnormal repetitive behaviors with a focus on exotics, but definitely not limited to, but I am comfortable working in the area of exotics. Lily's out there sunning herself now with that gargantuous wingspan, and Coco is watching her. When I first started working with Coco, it was 100% off contact. But then I saw that interaction was a positive reinforcer for him, and I wanted to apply tactile interaction, but I wasn't sure if he would accept that. Not all animals like to be touched. Being touched could be a major stressor to an animal. All right. So, but I saw through training, through interacting, that I think tactile engagement could be a potential reinforcer. And I was looking at building my list of reinforcers with Coco. So those of you that follow the work that we do know what I'm doing. I first started teaching Coco a head target, okay? Before I get too far into that, I'm going to end this episode of Coffee with the Critters this morning with numerous animals, my training approach, okay? And Coco is one of them. Coco is one of 3 or 4, I think. Okay, so closed captioning, I don't think I can offer that, Lisa, until after the live stream is over. So let's go ahead and get started with defining abnormal repetitive behaviors. Here's my stack of research papers that I'm going through over and over again to back up my findings over the past 15 years. This is one of the things of interest, abnormal repetitive behaviors, that I focus on in working with animals. So one of the places I started with Coco was teaching him a head target, because he will bite hands in close proximity, but we're slowly working on that. Now I'm to the point where I don't have to ask for a head target for tactile interaction. So how do I know that I've correctly identified touch as a positive reinforcer? How do I know? Because a lot of times I'll hear people say, how do you know you're delivering or working with a positive reinforcer? In the beginning, sometimes I don't know. I experiment a lot with the environment to identify. So how do I know that my touch with Coco is a positive reinforcer? Positive reinforcer, a reinforcer is an event that happens after a behavior that causes the future rate of that behavior to maintain or increase. and it's positive because it's added. Positive reinforcers are always things of value to the animal. Yeah. You like that? Would you like some more? And I always put, can I pet on cue to help offer choice into the animal's environment? And choice is one of the 3 things I really focus on when empowering animals, changing abnormal repetitive behaviors. So let me take a look. How do I know? Body language, behavior. He's enjoying it. Because he lets you do it again, correct, Carrie? If he didn't enjoy what I was delivering, or if my touch was not a positive reinforcer, you can't see, but this play gym has all types of space for him to move away. Okay, it goes way over there. All right, yet he's choosing to stay right here, closest to me. So one of the steps in shaping with him was after the head target, after I was able to remove the head target, if he vocalized, then I would deliver. So he's about ready to go. Okay, conditioned reinforcer. He hears the crinkling of the bag. Conditioned reinforcers are also cues. Coco. And he moves towards it. And he keeps eating it, so I know I'm delivering another positive reinforcer. Okay, so back to abnormal repetitive behaviors. What are they? In my area of specialty, when I'm working with abnormal repetitive behaviors, they're not due to where I focus is ARBs, is what I call them, that are reinforced due to lack of environmental enrichment, stimulation, the inability to escape stressors due to lack of choices, lack of space. Abnormal repetitive behaviors also develop out of inability to exhibit natural behaviors that they would in the wild, such as running, flying, that social complexity that comes from living in herds, flocks, what have you. You want to come down? Okay. So repetitive, unvarying, and apparently functionless behavior. And we had in a very engaging talk, myself and several different trainers, when we were out at Best Friends Animal Sanctuary. In Kanab, Utah, back in April. And I was like, show me behaviors that are functionless. Especially when working in the area that I work with, that I like to focus my education and experience in working. Every behavior I've seen has a function. My good friend Joel Vidovic gives a fabulous presentation, which he'll be coming in level 2 to give a presentation. But he gives one called WTF, What's the Function? I see a lot of abnormal repetitive behaviors developing out of the inability to, and I keep delivering certain ones, showing certain ones, the inability to work with stress. There's another talk I give called the 3 C's, and it is in this presentation next weekend. choice, control, and complexities, because studies show that most animals in our care greatly lack in complexities in their environment. Okay, and that is why I train. We provide a lot of foraging toys in the Parrot Project. Every Friday we have Foraging Friday. Nice job. We are reinforcing this. You can do it again. We're trying to get him to do somersaults. Okay, so that was just a capture. I captured it. The behavior happened, and I reinforced once it happened. Okay, so some examples I have right here in the public view. A lot of times the public does not understand what they're seeing. So it could be something in the form of polar bears swimming the same repetitive circles in their enclosures. Made for us. Hi, Rico. By the students at the Autism Model School, which we collaborate with. Providing job skills through the students there through a program they designed called Ought to Be Enriched, where they help us put together foraging enrichment for several of our animals. Helps provide them job skills. So like I was saying, in the public view, I'll go into some examples, but a lot of the public doesn't understand they don't recognize what they're looking at. All right, so that's why is understanding what abnormal repetitive behaviors are, why is it important? Because we can do better through understanding what they are and why do they exist. They exist for many different reasons, but let me give you some more examples. There's a lot of focus on the habit forming. Then you have to define what a habit is. Many abnormal repetitive behaviors, once they start developing, you want to catch them immediately. A lot of times I see them, they start developing because the animal has lack of choice to get to what it wants to get to, or lack of choice to get away from a stressor in the environment. The animal starts learning, very nice, Rocky, that it loses control over its environment. And that's what we do here, is try to provide that control. No matter, very pretty, Rock. A lot of people think our cages, our enclosures here are very big. Big can be a stressor to an animal if the animal is not used to large spaces. A lot of behaviors need to be shaped. A lot of abnormal repetitive behaviors develop out of lack of complexity in the environment. Like I was saying, in the Parrot Project, every Friday we focus on Foraging Fridays. I want to see that tactile enrichment changing. Where is the increase in complexity? Because studies also show with predictability comes boredom. Hi, Sam. With predictability comes boredom. And I said before, studies also show that, like, I'm being very careful, I don't usually sit down and pet him. Studies also show that social interaction is one of the most complex forms of enrichment for an animal. That social interaction can be incorporated into the animal's environment through training, Most people would say I'm just petting him. I am training him. I am getting my fingers closer and closer. Social complexity can come in the form of them engaging with other animals. Here, like just a little bit ago, it looked like I was sitting here begging him to let me pet him. What I was doing was watching his eye contact with Rico, that's right behind me on that perch up there. I'll take that. So Coco also has a broken wing. So I'm looking for that eye contact with certain animals, with different animals, because if I see that eye contact, then I start shaping social complexities with other animals, because I can't be out here all the time. I really focus on balance. I don't like, I try not to let animals here get over bonded with one trainer, one person. It's all about balance. I will start the training, but when I can start some very basic training, such as recalls, targets, then I ask another person to come in to help prevent that animal from getting over bonded to me. Because once you start getting an animal over bonded, now you're working with, you can start unknowingly reinforcing separation distress and separation anxiety. Behavior isn't easy. I don't learn from easy. Hi. So the second topic, coping effects. A lot of abnormal repetitive behaviors develop out of a way of an animal coping with the lack of choice or lack of control or lack of complexities in their environment. Yes. Not all abnormal repetitive behaviors, I just watch them. Like Rico with his somersaults, I watch to make sure that doesn't turn into abnormal repetitive behavior. A stressor developing out of inability to get to what he wants to. So if I see animals doing certain things to cope with their environment, coping means there's a stressor involved, and the only way they know how to relieve some of that stress is through doing some of these abnormal repetitive behaviors, such as excessive nail chewing, eye poking, a lot of other types of poking, over preening, over grooming. With my animals, if I'm seeing them groom more than 25% of their day, I am paying attention to that, because now that grooming is starting to happen. Due to a lack of something in their environment. Nice job! Sorry, the clapping is going to get Rico going. Woo! Watch the eye contact here. Woo! And don't look at it as these are just parrots. This is what I look like. This is what I look for with any species of animal I'm looking at. Yeah! Woo! Nice job. Put your wings on, Rico. Come on. 1, 2, 3. Nice. Woo! Okay. I'm looking for when he flaps, he flaps. Coco is big on, shows a lot of nesting behaviors. I want to eliminate those. He's down on the ground. His beak is in the corner. His butt is in the air. He's clicking his beak. Constantly shredding material, putting it into a corner. That would be fine if he was breeding with something else. I don't provide those type of environments, so reinforcing that behavior, allowing it to continue, can develop a lot of frustration in Coco, okay? Because the next part can't happen. So Coco goes on the ground a lot. So I identify the reinforcer. He goes on the ground when our Rottweiler comes in. So when Coco's in the cage and our Rottweiler Quincy's out. So I've identified Quincy's proximity as a reinforcer for Coco to go to the ground. So we use environmental events. We move where Quincy goes to help eliminate that. But something else I'm looking for, no matter if it's a parrot, I'm just looking at two animals. He's engaging with Rico. When Rico flaps his wings, Coco flaps his wings. So now I'm going to focus on training Rico to get Coco off the ground. So Rico already knows a toss it. So we're teaching Coco a toss it. If you're going to be on the ground, let's toss something. Go, 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 go. Yeah. Otherwise, this nesting behavior can become, it would be the only thing he does, all right? If he starts to do that, then they start impacted crop, dehydration. If he was a female, I could be focused on egg binder. I'm also concerned with prolapse cloaca. Okay, and with a lot of animals, when you start working with unenriched environments, stagnant environments that produce little to no physical or mental enrichment, they can often start leading to what I see is, first thing is over-grooming. Yep, over-grooming can turn into self-injurious behaviors, self-mutilation, feather-destructive behaviors. Once you start going into self-mutilation, often now you're dealing with a medical condition. And usually, what? Wow, go. Once you start dealing with a medical situation, once it turns into medical with a lot of self-injurious self-mutilation and self-injurious behaviors, a lot of times it leads to the animal's life is on the line, okay? And in the field that I work with, focusing on abnormal repetitive behaviors due to unstimulating mental and physical environments, you can change these. The longer the abnormal repetitive behavior is practiced, and you can tell when it's really practiced because they have every movement. Well, it's the same thing over and over. The head goes a certain way, the paws go a certain way, and you can even start to see the distant antecedents of when they're going to happen, such as looking at their eyes. Their eyes may do certain, move in a certain way that happens at no other time, but the antecedent to the rest of that behavior repertoire to follow into. And then you see a sequence of very well-practiced behaviors. And when you can tell when they're very well-practiced because every single body movement starts to be the same. It's not unvarying. And that's how you define, I can tell when I look at it, the history of reinforcement. We've got a very well-practiced one here. This has been going on for over months, over years, all right? The more well-practiced that abnormal repetitive behavior, in my experience, the harder it's going to be to change. Turkey vulture. Yeah, the harder it's going to be to change. But when you break those down in really small steps, you can start seeing those changes, such as, I'm not working with an abnormal repetitive behavior here, but what I'm working with is, what are those very small steps I'm looking for? Very nice. That is what I was looking for. Okay. So those are the small steps. When I start seeing small steps like that, that is my reinforcer to continue doing what I'm doing. Okay, I'm looking through some of your comments. Sorry, I'm going to have to go looking through this a lot when the presentation's over. Really just flew. Okay. I'm going to have to answer a lot of your questions when this is over because I'm focusing so much on Coco. I like that. But I'm also watching what are the cues that I'm giving that cause him to take the food faster. The reason I focus so much on that is because when I first started working with Coco, he is so fast. You're bit and bleeding and lost a half gallon of blood before you even know you've been bit. Coco is fast. So, and I know through like the companion parrot community, a lot of screaming is very repetitive. That's telling me it's been very well practiced. Okay. Back up to my presentation. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Does anybody have any questions so far? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let's skip to the next slide. Hi. Okay, Coco's ready. And I can shape duration. I want you staying calmer for longer periods of time. Very good. My fingers are starting to get a lot closer. Okay. We already talked about some abnormal repetitive behaviors to watch for: over grooming, rocking, rhythmic patterns such as the pace in which they do things. I watch for a lot of rhythm. What does it coincide with in the environment? Okay. Because whatever it coincides with could mean it's contextual. Then you can identify a stressor in the environment. Very nice, Rocky. Rico, you want to come back? A lot of abnormal repetitive behaviors have functions and have cues. There's reinforcers for why they exist. There's reinforcers for why they exist. I want to find out what those reinforcers are, because once I can find out what the reinforcers are, then I can start working on a behavior modification plan. Okay? Same patterns in swimming, pacing, vocalizations. I'm looking for repetitive movements in the same areas with the same body parts. Like I said, these can lead to, talk about history of reinforcement. That whistle is an antecedent to that. So that I know when I start hearing the, I need to start, it came way before then. I need to start changing it. Why do you give Coco the treat from above? Louise asked this question because he has, I'm still working on being able to touch him, and it's for my safety because I'm making him reach. Okay? And I'm looking for, I'm being very consistent and contingent with how I deliver to be very predictable to him in the beginning. Because if I were to deliver from down here and he's not stretching and reaching, if I don't read his behaviors correctly, right? If I don't read his behaviors correctly, I could get bit. Hands in close proximity, when he's not sure what you're going to do, will result in a bite. I guarantee you. Okay? That's why we train. And in the beginning, I'm very predictable. In the beginning, I'm very predictable. So then I could start doing something like, depends on what I'm training. When I work with a lot of exotics, a lot of zoo animals. So some of the things, one of the first things I'll teach after something like this is just a basic target. Good. The more complex the behaviors, such as abnormal repetitive behaviors, I need to get some type of complexity in their life fast. I train because it's the best form of communication I have found, okay? And one animal that keeps coming to mind is Micaiah, the pig-tailed macaque. So once we learn something like this, then we can increase the complexity like this. Good. Okay. In the Parrot project right now, we're working on beginning stages of teaching the difference between a foot target and a beak target. This is why I train, because it adds complexity to the animal's environment, all right? It's a form of communication. It's a form of mental stimulation and physical stimulation. Okay, so how would I increase the complexity now? Ask him to come up here. I'm going to give him this one a little bit. Good. Hi. Okay, Rico's like, train me. Train me. What I want to be turning. I have a note on the refrigerator right behind us. Snap peas never to be put in food dishes because they are of high value here. So we get the animals working for them. Okay, let me look at some of what you're saying. We have two behaviors, screaming and circling. The screaming is what I need whole family help. Small thing to start off with to show that we all have to step up. Yeah, we have several abnormal repetitive behaviors here. The circling is definitely from Rocky in the back. We have Snow. Snow's been in my care since she was 11 weeks old. Okay. Snow is our deaf and blind border collie. And she will circle and circle and circle or run laps, consistent repetitive behavior laps. When I see that, I get stressed because that's a sign of low stimulation in her environment. And I will let my dog training colleagues, friends chime in here. But when you're going to get a dog, do the research on the type of dog you get. Border collies are herding dogs. I didn't know I was getting a border collie. If I did, I wouldn't have gotten it because I can't. It's hard for me to provide what that animal needs in its life. Good. I would love a raven. I would love to train a raven and have a raven as an ambassador. So we brought in a couple different crows to see if we were ready for a raven. I need something that takes a little longer for them to eat. Sorry. Did you see how he just jerked? That we think there might be something wrong with Coco's vision too. Coco's an older bird. Good. Very nice, Rock. So in next weekend's presentation, I have so many different examples of abnormal repetitive behaviors. Sorry, I am looking through a lot of this. I'm going to have to answer a lot of this. Jim says, very interesting. I have a shadow light chasing border collie I'm working with. The behavior is very well established, practice for years. Attendants are difficult to, that's probably antecedents, are difficult to identify. Seems to be situation coping strategy. A lot of abnormal repetitive behaviors are a way for the animal to cope with lack of stimulation, choice, control, stressors in their environment. One of the saddest things to see, for me to see, is an animal that doesn't engage in its environment. An animal that just sits there, hangs its head, or does very little in its environment. Jim also says, suspected due chronic lack of stimulation. Would you say the function of the behavior is relief of boredom or frustration in low stimulation levels? Jim, such a great question. I would say it could be all of them. You know what I mean? Effectively self-reinforcing the behavior further through repetition of practice. Yeah, when I see this circling with Snow, my border collie, what I am seeing, and I identified this through interacting. So there, I just added a turn. So I'm starting to add even more. Coco knows so much. Jim, that's a great question. When I see Snow circling, when I go over and interact with her, I see her behaviors change. I see her body get calm. When I start asking her, this means come, because she can't see and she can't hear. This means come. The tail will wag, the head will drop, the body starts swaying. And I'm reading all those behaviors based on what they coincide with different interactions. So I call it calm behavior. And I say calm because I'll see her stop doing this and just go into, what would you like me to do? Give me something to do. So that training, and I often tell people, what I see from Snow when I train her is her saying thank you, because I'm communicating with her, I'm sharing information with her based on shaping and reinforcing small approximations in the beginning in our shaping plans. That's communication for her, and for an animal that can't see and can't hear, that's getting bumped by other animals or feeling different things in their environment that she's not aware of, I can tell she feels very safe when I'm working with her. I never leave the room without telling her I'm leaving the room. One small squeeze on her hips like this means stay very still. I'm going to be gone for a short amount of time. This on her side, means goodbye, I'm leaving for a long period of time. And I can tell through shaping those contingencies, she knows which one it means. And a lot of times with animals, they just want to know. Give them options that will allow them more choices and control over in their environment. And that, nice job, Coco. Nice job. Yeah. That's a little too fast. But that could be overstimulation because I just went like this. All right. Okay. So, abnormal repetitive behaviors. This is going through a lot of the research. Internal states due to environment with external cues. Those external cues could be stressors that the animal has no way to escape, avoid. I already said they can be frustration induced. They can be fear induced because something is scaring them in the environment and they know they have no way to escape, leading to learned helplessness. It could be due to physical discomfort. I was just talking to a veterinarian on the phone the other day. Good. About how some of these behaviors, these abnormal repetitive behaviors, when she was telling me about some of these repetitive behaviors, I said, is the animal in pain? And she goes, funny you should say that, because after we amputated a certain part, that abnormal repetitive behavior extinguished, no longer exists. A lot of abnormal repetitive behaviors are due to attempts to replace a missing behavior. This is why we're so big on providing foraging toys. Good. Because foraging is mentally and physically getting an animal searching for the food, mentally and physically stimulating. We were just talking in yesterday's Q&As in our level 1 and level 2. Foraging offers intermittent schedules of reinforcement. I work so hard at this, boom, then then I finally find this food item. Then I can work for 2 minutes versus 20 seconds, but I'm working harder, and then I find a different food reinforcer. Abnormal repetitive behaviors can develop out of the having no opportunity to exhibit a normal, natural behavior. There's no replacement. They start to become well established due to missing replacement behaviors or opportunity to find. They are replacement behaviors. They're replacement behaviors from stressors, frustration, lack of communication, lack of mental and physical stimulus. Okay. And this is just a basic. Good. I see somebody in here's in the Parrot Project. I know a lot of people are. Jim says foraging is so awesome. It is. You know, we here at the center care for several different species of animals. We have 15 animals in our care, and that includes 2 fish, 3 dogs, a pig, roller pigeon, turkey vulture, 7 parrots. Occasionally we bring in a zoo animal or a wildlife ambassador to train. And there's 7 of us here, 7 people, 15 animals. And we are having a very hard time keeping up with the enrichment. And a lot of people will hear me say, I have one competitor. And that is Mother Nature. I hold a high bar. It's not that I want to replace Mother Nature, by no means. But when I look out the window and see birds flying, and know that studies show that these birds can fly up to 40 miles a day, I'm just talking parrots. When you start talking about the other native species, then you're getting into migration. But zebras, giraffe, bears, walking, foraging, tens, hundreds of miles a day, I can't match that. But I can hold that bar so high thinking I need to do better for this animal in my care. Okay. Early rearing environment, how that animal was raised can have a big impact. This is why it's really important for a lot of animals to be raised with their parents, because their parents are teaching these animals things. Their parents are teaching them how to be this animal. I've noticed, and there's a lot of studies right in here on how early rearing environments impact. He went up, he came back down. Early rearing environments impact stressors. When these animals get older, They need to know that they are the animal that their parents have taught them to be. When that is missing, you have a higher rate for abnormal repetitive behaviors and stressors, and a lot of times those stressors are carried on through the animal's whole life. That's based on some of the studies I'm reading, and you can base a lot of that on their cortisol levels. Okay, so we can do better just by their early rearing environments. Plus forage, Carrie says, plus foraging opportunities are giving birds back the behavior they would normally in their day in the wild. But what I'm seeing, Carrie, the more we take away from their lives, the more they do not have in their lives in the wild, the more we have to increase the complexity of whatever we're doing. Hey! Because in the wild, they are spending numerous amounts of time just trying to survive. Make sure they don't get eaten, focusing on reproduction, rearing. So their activities, such as foraging in the wild, don't need to be as complex as they need to be in our care. Make sense? Hey, Quentin. Good. I'd like to have you in the Parrot Project, Quentin. Okay, so next slide. Let me see how many slides I have left. I think I'm almost done. An empowered animal is one that has the ability to make decisions affecting the consequences of its behaviors. That is what we do here. That is what we do through training, foraging, increasing complexity. An empowered animal shows confidence with the opportunities to manipulate its environment. And that's what we do here. We give the animals all types of situations which they can manipulate their environment, because studies also show animals prefer enrichment in which they can manipulate, that can change shape. There's also additional studies. They prefer enrichment in which they can change shape and sounds are involved. That's why we did that contra freeloading video with Milo, our pig, with a foraging device that also has the opportunity that makes sound. If you get on Google and Google contra freeloading, our video shows up. I don't want to reinforce that. Okay, there's a plethora of studies out there that shows learned helplessness, meaning the animal knows how, no matter what it does, it has no control over the consequences of its behavior. Okay, there's numerous studies out there that show it impairs cognition related to depression, paranoid responses, we see that. Suspicion, we see that. Suspicion of intention, we see that. Frustration, we see that. Impairs cognition, oh, we see that. So my saying this morning, if you're going to keep them, train them, all right? So we train all kinds of animals and numerous different species. Here I'm training a rat to place his 2 front feet on a foot target, because that way I can control where that rat goes. If I need him to go back in the cage, throw that foot target in the cage, deliver reinforcer, where it happens to be banana baby food. Okay? There's a lot of abnormal repetitive behaviors on bears, and there's numerous different studies. There's one that I was reading about the bears at Lincoln Park Zoo when they gave them opportunities to control temperature of their environment by allowing them access to additional enclosures off exhibit dens, the abnormal repetitive behaviors started to decrease. So that's just something that's simple. Okay, allowing additional access allowing control of temperature. But we need to build complexity. Here's what I said, Coco, when I first started training Coco, because a big part of my presentation is going to be on off-contact training. If you can't physically touch that animal, like I said, a lot of animals don't like to be touched. You don't have to. You can start mental stimulation through off-contact training, which then often moves to protective contact training, which then a lot of times moves to full contact, okay? Like what it has with Coco. I started off contact. Then I taught him a beak target through the cage bars, differential reinforcement of an incompatible behavior. If your beak is through the cage bars, you cannot bite me. You have the choice. Your beak comes out of those cage bars. This is for a photo from my beginning working with him a couple years ago, 3 years ago. If your beak comes out of between those cage bars, it's your choice. I'm going to teach you contingency. If your beak moves, so does your opportunity to be pet. So he chose to have his beak through the cage bars more. That's how I deliver tactile enrichment. Then when I started bringing him out of the cage, he already knew what this meant. That meant beak on chest, then I rub your head. Then I taught him the head target. And now you see I can do it without, if he'll allow me. So we're constantly shaping our behaviors, all right? That was Coco several years ago. Social complexity, I already said that, is one of the most complex forms of enrichments. Studies show that animals in our care, their preferred form of enrichment is positive reinforcement training, if we're actually using positive reinforcement training. And I also stated that studies also show that animals in our care are greatly lacking environmental complexities. So with that being said, take a look at our website, theanimalbehaviorcenter.com, and that's where you'll find our live streaming services. One of the several things that I do here at the Animal Behavior Center is give these presentations online to different universities, animal organizations, groups. All right, so next weekend I will be in Montreal talking about abnormal repetitive behaviors, how we can behavior modification plans, several case studies, increasing quality of life through training and environmental enrichment. And if you're interested in that, whoops, I'm going to have to post that. I didn't get it up high enough. If you're interested in that, yeah, we are going to show parts of this presentation. This is a 16-hour presentation I'm giving next week. Did you just poop on me or drop something? I'll be showing some of this in our level 1 and level 2. All right, so if you want more information on what we do, you can sign up for our email newsletter. If you're here on Facebook, it's right here on the left. And you'll get our, hey, Kim, I didn't know you were in here. Thank you. I'm glad you like this. You'll get our information, some of our information in our email newsletter. All right, so Coffee with the Critters next weekend. I don't know what's going to happen because I'm not sure of my schedule next weekend. I know I'm speaking Saturday and Sunday. I am going to try to live stream from Montreal, whether that's with some different trainers or veterinarians, or maybe I do a Cocktails with the Critters next Saturday night. I don't know what my schedule is, so stay tuned. I will let you know right here. All right, see you guys. I'm going to go back and respond to everybody's comments. Thanks for being a faithful follower. I appreciate it. If you know of anybody this information can share, please share this live stream with them. Thanks. See you guys.